there is an absolute a management of expectations that's going on here, which is like keep them low. And, you know, but that is, you know, that's a second area, that right? I mean, that is like, one is like politics as it creates expectations among the public, and the other is like an inside game as to who is going to get in with a certain amount of personnel, and that's like, you know, there's only so much that we can do in that respect. I mean, you know,
but the inside game is affected by the outside pressure.
No, I understand.
Or the union's membership.
I understand, and you know, like, you know, we talked to we talked to David Dayen about, like the process of him, like, you know, for instance, reporting on this inside track. I mean, obviously, like if somebody's coming out and saying that, who is it that he just, you know, Brian Deese is up for the National Economic Council. You know, that is basically a bat signal for people to get up in arms and complain about stuff like that. And, you know, my sense is of Yellen is that she is not optimal, but is like, you know, is the marginal difference between Yellen and whoever it would be, I can't even name a person, would be Treasury Secretary. Is that marginal difference, you know, more important than maybe getting someone who's like genuinely progressive at HUD, or genuinely progressive at labor, or genuinely progressive, or, you know, at least not pro austerity at the OMB. I mean, that's, you know, like those, in terms of the moment, those are the positions. And so it's sort of, I don't know if the marginal difference with Yellen would be worth it at that point, at this juncture. I don't know.
Well, HUD is, I mean, listen, January 1st, cities across America, you're going to have massive evictions
all over the place. Yeah.
Small business. Let's talk about that. In New York, in October, 80% of small businesses in New York City alone did not pay their rent. Can we process like what's actually happening right now?
Well, yeah, that is a failure, it seems to me, of what's going on in Congress.
Absolutely.
Of Pelosi's leadership and of Schumer's leadership. And, you know, we're hearing at least Schumer, you know, far be it from me, but, you know, Schumer's at least, you know, he is putting out the fires where he sees them, where we light them, right? Like where, right. You know, you see Dianne Feinstein, she steps down. Now it's Durbin, but it's better than Feinstein. Well, it is. I mean, honestly, she's just, you know, atrocious. It's not a huge upgrade, but, but, you know, and he's coming out with Warren and saying $50,000 on student debt, and that's going to make a difference. I mean, if it is executive actions, the only way to get any type of stimulus going, that $50,000 is going to be one end of the spectrum, and they're going to end up doing, I don't know, 20,000 or 25,000, and
because Biden's proposed $10,000 means tested one is like pretty crappy compared to the one being floated more by Schumer and Warren. But like, I feel like they need to remove all means testing and also should focus on canceling federal government loans. I don't understand why that isn't integral.
No doubt. I have very little doubt that if he doesn't have an opportunity to do this legislatively, they're not going to have a means test in there, because it's just going to be like just incredibly cumbersome. By the time you set up that bureaucracy to do means testing in the context of an executive action, it's going to be.
I mean, that doesn't prevent Democrats from constantly being over the top with the bureaucracy, the means testing, COBRA, all of these Pell grants, whatever. It's so in their DNA at this point. I'm hoping against it, but an executive action would have to be more sweeping. But that would require Biden to be a decisive leader, which I don't even know if he's proven that he's been very principled in anything really when it comes to just kind of pushing.
I think that's helpful.
Besides,
I think the fact that he's not principled is actually helpful.
It's a double-edged sword in that area. But that's why I think it was
Doug Henwood of all people. Gotta say, Joe could have done a lot worse than Yellen.
Sure. Of course he could have, but like, I guess you guys are like, if we start to say like, well, this is just like just
I'm
being
saying
numb
this about
to
Yellen,
Trump.
but I mean, if he's put, that's the thing is that like, I think particularly at the context of like Treasury, like that is a win. I mean, I think it could have been, that is a win. Like stopping the not the worst is actually a win. We lost this fight already. We are like, there's a certain amount of bailing water here. And Yellen is, at the bottom line is that like, look, there's only so much room for Treasury and the Fed to do anything at this point, right? Like Treasury, the best thing that she's going to be able to do is to salvage that thing that Mnuchin has pulled back. There's just only so much that can happen in this instance. You need to have the Senate. You need to have the Senate spend the money. And if they don't spend the money, there's just no money. It's not happening. And then it just becomes a series of executive actions. And I think they're going to do anything because they're going to be desperate because of this situation that is like headed towards us like an oncoming freight train. And so, the idea is like, who do you get in there that's not going to stop stuff? like this moment, like the problem that we had then in the wake of the financial crisis is there was a lot of people in that administration who were going to stop stuff. They were going to stop. They were, Jason Furman, we need to like, we do $700 billion and then we immediately pivot. Those are the people you don't want in the room. You want the context and the situation and really in many respects, the conventional wisdom, which has changed dramatically in the 12 years since 2008. You want that to be the force. So you want to basically make sure that there's no obstacles to this moment defining what happens. And so like a person like Janet Yellen, who's not going to come in and my assessment, and I could be wrong. I've never met her. I've never been in the room with her, like all this stuff, just like from what I've read, is that she's not going to be the person to say, wait a second, we need to turn off the spigots. And and that's all because the thrust of this is going to be open the spigots. That to me is the default position that everybody's going to have. And so the problem's not that like we don't have enough like sort of like progressives in the Senate, let's say. The problem is that we have one or too many Joe Manchins who are going to stop it. And so within the context of the administration is like, how do you make sure there's not going to be somebody who's going to have the ability to sort of like stop the momentum. And so that's why, I mean, particularly for Yellen, that's my sort of sense, but